welcome. Come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I am taking you through all of the books that slightly disappointed me when I was reading in 2020. Books are like every other medium. You can't love every book that you read in the same way that you don't love every food that you eat or you don't love every movie that you see. So why should book be any different? There are a couple of books that kind of missed the mark for me in 2020 in terms of maybe the characters were a bit off, maybe the pacing was a bit off, maybe I didn't like some aspects of the story, but that does not mean that I hated the author. That does not mean that I hate you if you really enjoyed this book. For instance, there might be a book on this list that you really loved, but there might also be a book that disappointed you in 2020 or any other year that I really loved. Reading is just so subjective, and everybody will read the same book differently, which is such a great aspect of books that we can discuss it like this. I have quite a few opinions to share, so let's get unpacking them. The first book that I'm going to talk about is If I Never Met You by VIII McFarlane, and the biggest reason that I did not like this book is because of the representation in it. So, okay, it does have a POC character, it does have a character who originally comes from the Caribbean and moves to the UK, but I didn't love that that was written by a white author. I didn't love that it wasn't written as authentically as it should have been and as it could have been if it was written by a person of colour. It felt very kind of, these are the struggles that I know people of colour go through, so I'm going to write somewhat of a description of that, where I didn't feel like it was well represented. I didn't feel like it was done very well. There was one scene kind of halfway through the book where VIII McFarlane tried to show everybody what it's like to be a person of colour in the UK, but it didn't really come across very well, and other than that, there aren't really any aspects of that that are shown. Something else that kind of disappointed me about this book was just how slow the romance was. This is an enemies to lovers book and a fake dating trope, but the characters don't start actually fake dating each other or don't even discuss their fake dating until at least 2/3 of the way through the book. And for me, that's maybe just a little bit too late, and I feel like most of the action is already over. And I want kind of more of a build-up throughout the book. I don't want it to just be thrown into my face 70% into the book. I'd actually like to see a bit more of the characters interacting with each other in that way, seeing their relationship kind of build from hating each other to softening towards each other and then warming up towards each other and then really getting to know each other a bit better. That's something that I really wish had been done in this book, but it just missed the mark there a bit for me. The next book that's on this list, the reason that I didn't like it is solely character focused, and that book is I Owe You One by Sophie Kinsella. I have a kind of an up and down relationship with Sophie Kinsella. I will either really, really love the book that I've just read, or I won't be super keen on it at all. And this was unfortunately a not super keen on it book. The main reason I wasn't so hype on this one is the characters. I felt like the main character, VIII, was a bit of a pushover, and I don't really want to read about doormat characters. I want to read about somebody who is strong enough to have her own opinions and is strong enough to tell people when something is happening that she doesn't like, and is strong enough to be able to tell people that she has grown up with and that she is related to and that she loves, this isn't sitting out well with me, let's fix this up a bit. I don't love reading about awful characters, surprisingly, and aside from VIII herself and Sebastian, the love interest in this book, the majority of the people in this book were so awful. Her mother was an absolutely awful person. Her two siblings were just the worst, and do not even get me started on Ryan, the other love interest, who for the vast majority of this book absolutely rubbed me up the wrong way. And then kind of 50% of the way through the book, there is a sex scene where he can only get off by being told just how much VIII had a crush on him back when they were teenagers. I really did not enjoy that aspect of it at all, and I really did not enjoy this book last year. Next book on the list is Meg Joe by Virginia Cantra, and I love Little Women so much. I have read the book about 3 times, I'd say, by now. I haven't seen the film yet, mainly because I just want to save myself for it. But Jo is one of my favourite characters, and I felt like she was portrayed really well here. But Meg really wasn't. Meg really got the short end of the straw here. In Meg and Jo, Meg is portrayed very much as your stay-at-home mother, but very subservient and very does everything to please everybody else and doesn't really do anything for her own benefit or to further her own life or to improve her own situation. For example, I think she does a basket making course or she provides some kind of a service, and people come to her and say, "Oh my god, this looks fantastic. I'd really love to get one." And she's just like, "Okay, I'll just make one for you," and doesn't accept any payment at all for it. I thought that that was something that could have been done, even just that little thing, I thought that could have been done much better, because we see Meg, who is a stay-at-home mother. We could have had her doing a little kind of a side hustle as an entrepreneur, doing these kind of baskets up for the members of the community. I thought that was such a missed opportunity. I know that I said last year was the year of the romance discovery, but not every romance that I read was a hit. And unfortunately, Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey was absolutely not a hit. If I ever hear the phrase baby girl again, I am going to knock tables over. It is the least sexy thing I have ever experienced. And I listened to the audiobook of this and I genuinely cringed every time that Travis said it. I did not get on board with their romance at all. It felt like anytime that somebody was interested in Georgie, Travis no longer saw her as his best friend's little sister. He saw her as a sexual entity. But other than that, he completely just saw her as his best friend's little sister. And that dynamic really did not work for me. Also, as I have said already, the dirty talk was horrifically cringy. I never want to hear the words baby girl again in any context, but especially not sexually. And I cannot get on board with the thought of discussing somebody's dad while you're in foreplay session. Did not enjoy that book at all. I don't know if I'm going to continue with Tessa Bailey's work. I'm going to have a look at a couple of reviews and see if maybe some people are gelling a bit better with those ones than with Fix Her Up. But that is absolutely not going to be darkening my door ever again. I've talked about this one before, but another disappointment of mine was a non-fiction book called The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Blythel. And the main reason that this one disappointed me is kind of because I set different expectations for it. There's a bookshop in the town of Wigton in Scotland, and they take on people who will run it every now and then, and Sean is the main proprietor of the bookshop. The shop also has like a Facebook group where he will put up the kind of weird and wonderful and wacky customer requests that have come in. And I kind of expected that this book was going to be more of that it was going to be a collection of what really weird orders had come through the emails today, or what a customer was come in and like, I want a book that has a red cover, that's the only thing I can remember about it. It wasn't that. It was more so Sean grumbling about owning a bookshop and the ins and outs of running a bookshop. And I think I just had something so different in my head that it just wasn't going to work out for me at all. Another book that didn't really hit the mark for me in 2020 was The Education of Ivy Edwards by Hannah Tovey. And again, I think that the reason I didn't enjoy this one so much was my own expectations that I put on it. Maybe I misread the blurb. Maybe I had pictured it totally differently in my head. But the book was so different to how I had initially thought that it would have been. What I was going in for and what I thought was going to happen was something a lot more of a Bridget Jones meets Eat, Pray, Love, where a woman is dumped and then kind of goes on a self-discovery journey. Maybe she goes all around the world and has a little bit of a travel section, and then she comes back and she like bosses out her job and spends a load of time with her friends. And some of that does happen, but quite a lot of the book is focused on drug use and drug abuse and very, very heavy drinking and spending all of your Sunday in a hungover daze. It might be that I'm just too much of a prude, but reading about all of that, like drug use and debauchery and drinking and all of that, it just wasn't my scene. It's not something that I enjoy doing in real life. So with that in mind, it's very likely not going to be something that I'm going to enjoy reading about. So reading about Ivy's drug use and reading about Ivy's friends' drug uses and all of their like drug-abused haze, drug-fueled orgies, all this kind of stuff, this book just was not for me. The next book that disappointed me, but only slightly, was The Black Kids by Christina Hammond Reid. And I will admit that the majority of this book was definitely something for me. And it was something that I was really looking forward to because I had a connection that I had the same name as the character, and I was born in the year that the book was taking place in. But there was one aspect of the book that I really did not enjoy, and that is the cheating aspect. I absolutely abhor cheating in real life and in any kind of a media. I don't enjoy reading about cheating. I don't enjoy reading about cheating for certain when it's done by 16, 17-year-olds. And that aspect of the book, it just knocked off an entire star for me completely because I don't enjoy reading that kind of thing, especially when it's somebody who's so young and who does it to one of their own best friends. The next book on the list is probably the most disappointing of all because it was my most anticipated book of the entire year. I spent all of 2019, the year that it came out, I spent the whole year waiting for a copy of it. And then when I did get a copy, I didn't gel with it at all. Unfortunately, that's true. I think I got into 30 or 40 pages of this book and I could not gel with it at all. I don't even know what the reason was. Maybe I thought it was too kind of fan fiction-y. Maybe I thought it was just a bit too wacky. Maybe I just couldn't get with the world building because there were some aspects of it that I knew hadn't been done properly, in that I think Henry was called the Prince of Wales, but wasn't actually the eldest child of the monarch. So that this takes 2 seconds of research on Google. That element of it, didn't enjoy that. And I think just the story didn't connect with me at all. I probably will go back to it at some stage, but for now, it's kind of languishing on the DNF pile. The last book that disappointed me in 2020 was The Best Laid Plans by Cameron Lund. I went into this thinking that it was going to be really sex positive and that it was going to give teenagers a really great message about waiting until it's the right time for you to lose your virginity, and that it's okay to have not lost your virginity yet, and that it's okay to want to wait until you've met the right person. Something that I think every teenager needs to hear. But this book absolutely did not do that. It marketed itself as a sex positive book, but it absolutely was not. I mean, you can't market yourself as a sex positive book when you are going around calling virginity a disease. That is not something that I think somebody who is worried about losing their virginity for the first time, or worried about being the only person in their friendship group who hasn't lost their virginity, it's not something that I think anybody of that age bracket or anybody in that situation should read. It's not a book that I would give to a teenager who is starting to think about sexual activity or is worrying about losing their virginity. It has so much potential to bring such a positive message about virginity and about waiting for the right time, but it absolutely missed the mark. Those were all of the books that disappointed me in 2020 while I read them. What books didn't really hit the mark for you in 2020? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Yeah.